Okay. Okay. Um, Good evening, everyone. On this reading day, we are conducting a national webinar, and it is by famous Sir Professor Sagir Ali Sir. Okay, he will be introduced by Dr. Reena Muhammad ma'am. And before that, I let me welcome the compare of the day, Fatima Tepshi from Second MA English Language and Literature. Fatima Tepshi, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all. I warmly welcome everyone joined here to our webinar on contours of religious precarity and feminist tropes in Monica Alice Bricklane and Untold Story, conducted by PG and Research Department of English, MES Asmabi College. Now, let me invite Dr. Reena Muhammad, HOD, PG and Research Department of English, for welcome speech. Ma'am, please.
Chief guest of the day, Mr. S.K. Sagarali, coordinator of the program, Ms. Jamilat, teachers of the department, invited guests, faculties from other colleges, and my dear students. Good evening, everyone. Every year, June 19th is observed as National Reading Day in honor of Sri P.N. Panikkar, who is regarded as the father of library and literacy movement. In connection with the reading day, as in previous years, the PG and Research Department of English, MES Asmavi College, is organizing various programs this week. Today, we have an invited lecture on the topic uh, religious precarity and feminist tropes in contours of religious precarity and feminist tropes in Monica Ali's story. The invited lecture is delivered by Mr. S.K. Sagarali, Assistant Professor of English, Midnapur College, Autonomous College, West Bengal. I know Mr. Sagarali personally as we were co-participants in a refresher course organized by Aligarh Muslim University. He used to um, he used to make the sessions lively with his thought-provoking questions. He is a scholar of great repute and has to his credit various national and international publications. Mr. Sagarali, sir, we are extremely privileged to have a serious academician like you as our resource person. I hope that our students will be greatly benefited by your expertise in the subject. On behalf of the PG and Research Department of English, MES Asmabi College, I welcome Sri S.K. Sagar Ali to this webinar. I also welcome Ms. Jamilat, the coordinator of the program, to this meeting. Welcome all the invited guests, teachers of the department, students of the department, faculties from other colleges. Welcome everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, I'm honored and happy to invite Sri Sagar Ali, Assistant Professor, Midnapur College, West Bengal, for keynote address. Sir, please.
Thank you very much. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the principal of this college and Dr. Reena Muhammad, Professor Reena Muhammad. And she is so humble and she's so good-minded person. And I really admire her personality and skills and the lively work she had done with the students. And thank you very much, all the students and Dr. Reena Muhammad and all the principal sir of this college. So I would like to go to my discussion. Before going into the discussion, I would like to discuss the two things. Number one, what is the story of the novel The Untold Story, written by Monica Ali, and the story of Brick Lane. So after after relating the story or dictating the story, I would like to the precarious situation of religion and the feminist aspect. What the title of my paper. See, the novel Untold Story revolves around the character Lydia, Lydia, who is considered as a reflection of Princess Diana. As a person, she created a fake death of her own and moved to Kingston with the help of her personal secretary Lawrence in 1997. The entire crux of the novel revived around the past and present life of the character Lydia, who comes out of the royal family. Clear? Monica Ali focuses on the theme of identity, loneliness, and life. In this novel, she traces out the shades of the Princess of Wales. Monica Ali has put forward a number of true instances and emotional experiences by the princess. As, as a British writer, she comes out with the recreation of the Princess of Wales' life in the form of a fairy tale. She confidently put forth the idea of exploration and quest for identity in a simple way. Monica Ali, when she was at the age of 13, watched Diana gets married to Charles. It seemed to be a fairy tale to her. After her death, she wondered with the question, what if she had not died? This made Monica Ali's to create this novel. Clear? So the story traced out the effect of living life under the spotlight in a third person narrative. And we all know that literature is life. The perception of life is understood by literature, and characters express thoughts and feelings. Self exploration exhibits the truth about individual and transform taken by them. So self discovering is the main theme deals by Monica Ali in all her writing, or you can call self exploration. So as a writer, she tries to give more importance to the person's identity, which is linked with the concept of oneness, ONENESS. And we all know that the concept of oneness is important in each and every religious aspect or in religion. Whatever we call in Islam taqwa or the God consciousness. Here, the stories mostly revolve around the self exploration of the characters at different circumstances. So, the novel deals with the moral development of the woman in society, and it explores the life of being alone, being lonely. So, oneness means being alone in this text or in such kind of literary aspect. So the concept of oneness is the illustration of self as one or as many. But in religious aspect, it's a something different quest for God. Got it? So it is fully depending on the mentality of the person. So literary, it means that cognitive self on the self concept is psychologically that deals with the emotion of the person. So in Untold Story, Lydia lives with a new identity, which is away from the royal life of the princess. Lydia tries to live a normal life without any stress. She comforts herself with a simple life which is filled with space to be on her own. To be on her own. At Kingston, at Kingston, she started to work. She feels better when she earns money. And she says also that she also really feel that she is standing on her own feet now. So she always has consent not to reveal herself to anyone. This is the basic self-exploration theme of self-exploration is advocated by Monica in Untold Story. And another novel, Brick Lane. I would like to sum up Brick Lane in 3 lines. In Brick Lane, a young Bangladeshi woman, Nazneen, arrives in 1980s London, leaving behind her beloved sister and home for an arranged marriage and a new life. Trapped within the four walls of her flat or house in East London and in a loveless marriage. Remember this, loveless marriage. Trapped within the four walls of the flat in East London and within the loveless marriage with the middle-aged Chanu, her husband, Chanu, Chanu. She fears her soul is quietly dying. Got it? So this is the most important aspect of the two novels, self-exploration. And characters are in a solitary or lonely, or they are trying to find themselves or explore themselves in different ways. Now I am going to the main discussion of my text. See,
স্যার,
actually, yes,
স্যার গ্রুপের লিংকটা একটু শেয়ার করা যাচ্ছে না, একটু দেখবেন?
just a minute. I'm giving the link to the group and just wait. Yes, now I think it's okay. I have shared the link in the group. Just see. So what I was discussing is that see, Monica Ali's novel Brick Lane, published in 2003, and Untold Story, both these two texts or novels incorporate the distance and disguise of masquerade performances. I mean, you have seen the masquerade dances, hiding the face, hiding the cover, under the cover. So the masquerade performance into their own textual procedures. So literary decisions attempt to overcome the visual effect of the veil and the entrapment of the luminous appearances. In Brick Lane, abjected Muslim migrant wife, because why migrant? Because Chanu and her wife came from Bangladesh to England, finds her agency in spiritual and erotic, spiritual side by side, erotic rejuvenation. That is most important. So in Untold Story, the aging post-feminist celebrity princess flees her abjection to the image. and with it, her public agency and effective connection. Not dying becomes the measure of the former princess's accomplishment, and melodrama her mood. Though, sorry, through mere survival, she secures a preservation of sovereign succession and reveals the absence of choice of a way of life. Choice, quote unquote, choice. What was her choice of a way of life? Got it? So, as a British writer of Muslim and Bangladeshi descent, Monica Ali discovered her own entanglement in effect, AFFECT, visuality and nationalism through the quite different reception of the two novels. And I am just reading out an interview in 2019 where Monica Ali said, Nazneen the protagonist, of Brick Lane is a virgin bride, uneducated, unworldly, has an arranged marriage to a much older man, suffers the scrutiny of the wider community. Suffers the scrutiny of the wider community. Has an affair, but decides that a man is not the way to salvation and reinvents a new life for herself. This is how Monica Ali speaks about Nazneen in an interview. And also, she says that she also utters some, articulates some other important words. She said, Lydia, regarding the untold story, Lydia of the protagonist of Untold story, on the other hand, is a virgin bride, and she is an uneducated, unworldly, has an arranged marriage to a much older man, suffers the scrutiny of the outside world, remember this, suffers the scrutiny of the outside world, has an affair, but decides that a man is not the way to salvation and reinvents herself and her life. But one story has brown people in saris in it and the other doesn't. Remember the last line? But one story has brown people in sari in it and the other doesn't. So this is the two different angle having some connectivity between the two. One is Untold story, the first one is Brick Lane, and the second one is of Untold story. So in the course of the interview, Ali describes the expectation that minority and queer, Q-U-E-R, minority and queer novelist will write about identity-based things and struggles of that identity. Got it? So if they do not write, critics become confused. So what I argue is that Ali's narratives anticipates the effect of ethno-religious difference and visual cues, even though they were not able to surmount the racial, national, and religious framework that governed to their perception. Nazanin as a round character, Brick Lane disavows the master signifiers to of Islam. I mean, it makes no explicit reference to the prophet and refers to God, not Allah. Refers to God, not Allah. Perhaps most significantly, Nazanin wears a sari. Only a few times does the narrative refer to her use of it as a head covering. As a head covering. Clear? So, Ali, Monica Ali, represents a woman who achieves recognition and power through belief and practices that usually made synonymous with the, I will use the two terms that are synonymous with masochism, 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 and subjugation in the Western imaginary. So masochism is a term that is used by Freud and other philosophers as well, and I will discuss it in the latter part of my lecture regarding masochism. So it will synonymous with the masochism and subjugation in the Western imaginary. And diminishment of the veil, VEIL, allows the protagonist to register as flesh, FLESH. Nonetheless, the novel's early reception demonstrates that countering the effect of the veil leads to the reading of a choice feminism or choice feminism, you can call choice feminism, unimpeded by community. I am repeating once again. What I said is that the novel's early reception that demonstrate her the countering the effect of the veil leads to the leading of her choice feminism, and that was unimpeded by community, whether political or spiritual. So Untold Story is the what if version of Diana, Princess of Wales. Had she survived her historical death? In contrast, I mean, in Untold Stories, Lydia Snarebrook must disappear to live, attempting to become a body without an image. So Ali's equation of recognition with death shows the impossibility of an afterlife for the luminous feminine spectacle. Got it? So, as a construction, Diana Lydia fits the concept of assemblage. That is complex constellation of the object bodies, expression, qualities, territories that arrange themselves and connect through desire. What is assemblage? I have already discussed. That is complex constellation of the objects, bodies, expressions, qualities, and territories that arrange themselves and connect through desire. As Deleuze and Guattari have discussed. Deleuze and and Guttari have discussed the concept of assemblage that I used here. So the plastic surgery and other means of cosmetic rejuvenation in this instance enact a enact a cutting off as a life of force to disrupt or redirect a habitual movement. A habitual movement. So surgical removal becomes a chemophase and an act of maternal sacrifice. So masochism appears in additional guises in two works. In two works, its interpretation becomes pivotal in each one. Now the question arises, is Nazanin masochistic? Is Nazanin, the central character of Brick Lane, the central heroine or character of Brick Lane, is Nazanin masochistic in submission to her fate as a traditional woman? The question arises. She regards her disposition as sinful when she protests her son's death, and sinful when she gives herself over to her attraction to Karim, her lover in UK, in England, despite being her husband. Got it? So she attributes both events to fate. Lydia both resists her fate as Diana, the assemblage, and submits to an increased threat of fatality to herself and her children. So the question of what registers as agential and what role recognition plays in agency are crucial to interpretation of these dynamics. So the issues brings to the fore the judgments about what kinds of choices and actions count in identifying agency and which do not in feminist reading. Got it? So the feminist thinkers have reassessed the masochism, particularly as formulated by Giles Deleuze, to argue that it can be employed as a strategy for managing power relations. For managing power relations. Another one, you can name Amber Jamila. That is different thing. I don't want to make it a complex one. So what I'm saying is that masochism in such reading becomes a highly plastic and analytic and a bodily practice, not limited to overt sexual acts. So this distinction bears upon the understanding of submission or giving in as a cultivation of potential in Islam. So Nazanin does not capitulate to an indifferent fate or succumb to an Asiatic fatalism linked to quietist Islam, Quietist, quietist Islam. Though she regards her behavior as masochistic and fatal, fatal. The text, Brick Lane, grounds Nazanin's renewal instead in everyday experience. that lead her to distinguish passivity and self-destruction from Muslim belief. The tafsir, 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 the so-called word of praxis, foregrounds woman's experience as mood of Quranic exegesis. Quranic exegesis. I mean the explanation of the Quranic lines or Quranic verses. On the other hand, Untold Story secures its premise by presenting as credible Lydia's conviction that her sons will be killed if her identity as the historical Diana is discovered. Got it? So in this Lydia becomes the cold mother, cold, cold mother that Deleuze describes. Deleuze revises Freud's formulation of sadomasochism. Deleuze revises Freud's formulation of sadomasochism by separating the two dynamics through return to the literary works of Sade, S-A-D-E, Sade, and Sacher-Masoch. Two different persona. S-A-C-H, Sacher-Masoch. So masochism employs the aesthetic techniques of suspense and disavowal, DISAVWOL, which produce qualitative delay instead of quantitative repetition. I mean, postponing fulfillment, especially through elaboration of contractual conditions, only intensifies masochistic pleasure. So female masochism stems from a desire for recognition. Remember this. Female masochism stems from a desire for recognition by an objectified or subordinate subject, and a desire for belief from guilt by a dominant subject. And this happens in Brick Lane as well. Clear? So Lydia's masochism is based in Diana's actual practices, but also on, you can call it, but also on the literary premises of her survival, which respond to the removal of Diana's status as a transcendent white global mother. So Lydia is thrust into, have you heard the name of Giorgio Agamben? Lydia is thrust into Giorgio Agamben's naked life, quote unquote naked life. This is not my word. This is not my phrase. Naked life is the very phrase used by Giorgio Agamben. Giorgio Agamben, Agamben, is a famous philosopher. At present, he is doing well. So Giorgio Agamben's naked life narrative. So Lydia is thrust into this framework of naked life narrative, in which, what do you mean by naked life? Now, in which keeping alive of the body surpasses all other values. Keeping alive of the body surpasses all other values. Aims. Values, not only values, aims or qualities. So the naked life, the discourse of naked life or narrative, in which keeping alive of the body that will surpass all other values, aims and qualities. Got it? So here you can call the Untold Story reveals the collapse of such and meditations. Collapse of such meditations. When Diana figure, when the Diana figure detaches the representation, she must be reinstalled in Angelo nationality, racial, whiteness, heterosexuality, and homogeneous provincial life. So, Lydia stands in need of the biopolitical rescue and protection she once extended to abjected populations in Britain and the naked lives of the post imperium. So, at the same time, she expects to find herself as a lost origin and potential site of rejuvenation. Got it? So, what I said about the Giorgio Agamben's naked life, I mean, as well as the biopolitical powers, I mean, the exchanges of biopolitical zones contribute to Monica Ali's latent content, particularly when the novels are considered together. Considered together. So Agamben states that producing biopolitical power is the original activity of sovereign power, which arose from the contradictions in the Greek formulation of Zoe, Z-O-E, or mere life, M-E-R-E, mere life at home, and bios, bios. I mean, a particular way of life afforded by political status. So, Joe means mere life at home, and bios means a particular way of life afforded by political status. These are the terms used by Giorgio Agamben in his book. So, here the ideas of Homo sacer, HOMO, Homo sacer, SACER, or the victim who may be killed but not sacrificed. The victim who may be killed but not sacrificed obscures the foundational paradox of this binary. I mean, in modern democracies as well, Agamben contends citizenship became the vehicle of bios. Remember this. In modern democracy, what Agamben also says that citizenship became the vehicle of bios. Got it? Or rights discourse. But the mobile state of exception, quote unquote, mobile state of exception established by the Homo sacer allows for the deprivation of human rights or even human status through denaturalization, dislocation, and other means of managing populations. Got it? So we can see the dynamics of ambivalent racism, and that was used to justify the civil rights after the 9/11, and as well as in the, we all know that the death camp in the Foucauldian prison, and is the model of contemporary sovereign power. So biopolitics have completely absorbed the polis, POLIS police. Got it? So though, just a minute, just a minute. It's pouring outside. It's raining hard outside. So so what I was saying is that though regarded as literary novels, Brick Lane and Untold Stories, published in 2003 and there was 13 or 14 probably, both gained the currency through media. I mean, by portraying the immigrant status. So the brick lane capitalized on Ali's immigrant status, though her family left Bangladesh when she was 3. Got it? So the brick lane represents subcontinental migrants in London as sites of generative Muslim practice. Okay? So here Ali's idea of her fourth novel, Untold Story, that's said to be released in Britain around what would have been Diana's 15th birthday and marriage of her older son Prince William. The author refused the pre-publication interviews to preserve some of the mystique about the book, according to the publicist. But Ali published her own articles about in papers such as the papers like Telegraph, Times of India, etc., New York Times, etc. So, if in the brick lane controversy, Ali was seen to be insufficiently Bangladeshi, she was later imagined as insufficiently English. Got it? So, Ali's stylistic choice have contributed to her careful designation of placement. And in both the novels, fate, fate serves pivotal functions that contend with realist conventions. Fate is the most important thing. And another critique, probably you have heard the names Geoffrey Nash. Geoffrey Nash. He contends that Nazanin's fate, like the latter political agenda, like the latter political agenda introduced by Karim, is also a form of Islam. I mean, one ultimately nullified by the couple's adultery. So I contend that the vernacular understanding of fate has little to do with representing Islam per se. Though the family is Muslim, Brick Lane casts belief in fate primarily as maternal resignation before the abjection of poverty and powerlessness, the overweening dominance of contingency in bare life circumstances. Got it? Second, I do not tie Nazanin's adultery as a narrative rejection of Islam. I do not tie Nazanin's adultery as a narrative rejection of Islam. To read Christian woman as implicitly rejecting her religion because she commits adultery would certainly seem curious. Yet this equation is ready-made in the shorthand of the Islamic imaginary of the West. How? Nazanin's somatic incorporation of the body of belief is neither morally nor doctrinally acceptable, but it does not devote with the rejection of her faith. The narrative source and the coded female, I mean the protagonist change that is effective, somatic, performative, and the coded female. And here as a coded, CODD, coded female. Nazneen dramatizes a mood of Muslim practice produced by contemporary migrant women who enacts a somatic and effective drama. Somatic and effective drama. Got it? So, her ways of everyday living and being related to tafsir, tafsir of practice. Okay, so if Brick Lane withholds in order to revise the masochism of Veiling, Untold story shows the failure of masochism as a strategy for managing power relations for the luminous assemblage of nationalized and globalized post-feminism. Dr. Rina, could you please tell me how much time do I have?
Sir, you can take your own time, how much time will you take, sir?
I will take at least 5 to 10 minutes if you
Oh,
allow
okay,
me.
sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, okay. So here, um, Brick Lane gives us the idea of the revise of the masochism of Veiling, and the Untold story shows the failure of the female masochism as a strategy for managing power relations for the luminous assemblage of nationalized and globalized post-feminism. Got it? Here, what I'm saying is the assemblage in Brick Lane. I mean, Brick Lane opens with a flashback to Nazneen's birth, when her mother detached emotionally from sick infant. So Nazneen's move to Britain to marry improves her biopolitical position, but does not eradicate her vulnerability or grant her much further economic, social, emotional mobility. So, in her linguistic and social isolation, upon her arrival in London, she fits the stereotype of a lower class Muslim village woman as sequestered, passive, mentally curtailed. So, she acts as a blockage, BLOCKAG, blockage in or a betrayal of the national ideal. Got it? So, here Nazneen's exchanges with her sister Hasina, a poor, unmarried, itinerant laborer in Dhaka, keep in the foreground her proximity to death. The threat culminates early, but in London, where Nazneen's own child dies, got it? So the protagonist acquires the capacity to inhabit national body through takes reluctance to represent her through stock signifiers. Stock signifiers, as I have already mentioned, where the Nazneen wears a sari. In a few instances, she uses it to cover her head. Okay, so here the languages of clothes, I mean, the dressed bodies silently project a wide spectrum towards the attitudes toward hijab, attitudes to which range from rejection to ardent celebration. So, the focal point of Nazneen's identity is not her head covering, in part because the sari is more ambivalent signifier than the veil or hijab. When Nazneen covers, she does so by pulling her sari over her head or her head scarf over her face. Moreover, especially in part 1, Nazneen spends much of the time in her apartment alone or with her husband, where the need to cover does not arise. So her reaction to other characters suggests that she dresses modestly. Yet the narrative primarily represents Nazneen's body through her activities, not through her garb. Finally, Nazneen is poised to move from mere laborer to a designer clothes. From a laborer to a designer clothes, as she and her friend Rajia plan to open a shop. So Brick Lane can thus be read and has been read as a story of containment and absorption of differences into the new liberal feminist body politic. Got it? See, just a minute. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yes. So, uh, Diana's, if I take that Diana, I mean in Untold Story. In Untold Story, Lydia's American friend Amber recounts her own princess's fantasy as a narrative of revelation and discovery. Though people would initially be surprised, they soon realize the inevitability of her ascension, manifested in the dress, the houses, the cars, the charming prince who would propose, who would propose, and all girls feel like that. So, Monica Ali's Lydia has traversed the fantasy that the young Diana held when she became engaged to Prince Charles. So, as all girls do, Lydia and her American friend do not expect that they will need to promote and manage their natural yet individual aristocratic qualities through competition. So Diana's life contrasts in two stark ways with the princess's plot. Clear? Now, in Untold Story, Lawrence, the unnamed Diana's former private secretary and accomplice, uses the tropes of radiance, And here in Untold Story, both the princess and audience join to make the hunger for love dangerous. I mean, the historical Diana's precarity greatly increased after her divorce, when she lost her political station and hence the strictures that had protected her physically and semiotically from the consequences of recklessness. At the same time, Diana stoked her own political capital. I mean, Diana, the multicultural models, such as the bronzed, curly haired, through her tactile contact with population marked for death, etc. All these things are there. So in the narrative of the empire that emerged after her death, these romances depend on Diana's effect. So death completed the plot of Diana's precarious proximity. And Monica Ali avoids the placing Lydia entirely in the necropolitical realm, inhabited by Hasina and Rukban in Brick Lane. But Lydia approaches this zone through the masochistic contract that Ali devises for her. To exist, Lydia must abandon her ability to heal and to turn to be healed. Got it? So, I mean, to exist, Lydia must abandon the ability to heal and to be healed through the intimate contact, not only with Diana, but with her own children at all. So Diana fabricates her own body to become Lydia, just as Diana disciplined herself to enhance and increase the yield of beauty, the garb of beauty created by the camera in images of her. So the process does not subvert, rather extends the suffering and labors of her. In the process of managing her body physically with, the withdrawing from its effect. Got it? So the surgical alteration becomes a biopolitical technique. Surgical operation becomes a alteration becomes a biopolitical technique where the text reacts to the vulnerabilities of the celebrity saintly bodily celebrity saintly body stripped of protection, body stripped of protection. So through this text we get the idea of the proximity of femininity to fatality, and managing one's speculity is a discipline and a bodily strategy. So Ali's interest in representing women who are distanced from the typifying insignia, the veil for Nazneen, the status of visual icon for Diana, always allow the novelist to investigate the fabrication of womanhood as assemblage, literary as well as social. Got it? And Ali points to such dynamic when Nazneen falls into the body of the female skater. Female skater. When, if you have gone through the text, you will understand when she skates. I mean, it resonates with the novel's larger project of dramatizing belief as agential or fleshly. She regains her agency when she skates on the bed of ice. So the novel must distance Nazneen from the visible and linguistic insignia of Islam in order to insert the invisible and silent Nazneen into visual field of London. Got it? So this is how the whole thing revolves around. Now I will tell you one or two terms that I used in this text so that the whole thing will be clear to you. One thing is that the reduction of life to biopolitics. I mean, the reduction of life to biopolitics is one of the main threads in Giorgio Agamben's work in his critical conception of Homo sacer, that is reduced to bare life, quote unquote bare life, and thus deprived on a crucial distinction in Greek between bare life and the la vita nuda. So the reduction of life to biopolitics is one of the main threads in Agamben's work, and in his critical conception of Homo sacer, reduced to bare life and thus deprived of any rights. So Agamben's concept of the Homo sacer rests on a crucial distinction in Greek between bare life and la vita nuda. Clear? This is how the whole thing appears. And I have also discussed masochism. See, masochism means deriving pleasure from the experience of pain and humiliation. And the word comes from Leopold Sacher Masoch, Sachermasoch, an Austrian writer who disapproved of this use of his name and its association with the practice of perversion. Freud also describes three types of masochism: erotic masochism, feminine masochism, and moral masochism. Number one, sexual masochism or erotic. Sexual masochism refers to the erotic practices of those who seek orgasm through torment and humiliation. Whereas feminine masochism, meaning deriving pleasure from psychological suffering, the pain inflicted by oneself or others. And on the moral masochism, I mean, this is the second form of desexualized masochism. Freud coined the term moral masochism. And the last one is adaptive masochism. So adaptive masochism is discussed by contemporary French clinical, I can't recollect the name at this moment, but who claims masochism that has gotten bad press. I mean, she aims to redeem it by elaborating a positive form of masochism in early infant development. This is all what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Now, over to you.
Okay, Tepshi is not available, I think. Okay, thank you, sir. That was such an informative session. Okay, Tepshi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session. Next, let me invite Srimati Jamilat KA, coordinator of the webinar, for word of thanks. Ma'am, please.
Respected principal in his absence, respected HOD of the department, Dr. Reena Mohammed, director of the self-financing college, self-financing section of the college, Dr. Sumedin. Then several participants are there from various part of the country, I think, for them. Then, my dear students, my colleagues, and everyone, good evening. Very good evening to all. It's very happy to know that it's raining over there in West Bengal, sir. It's drizzling here also. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yes. So now, let me go to my duty because it's almost time. That's why. Before that, I want to tell you something because it was really an informative session. Because you told about several untold stories of fragmentation of the women. I think you have discussed the concepts of oneness in a different way. That was also interesting. Actually, students are learning, reading from various post-colonial feminism, eco-feminism, this, that, and all. And this was also a different experience for them, I think. I actually wanted to have an interactive section with you, sir, but there is no time left. That's why we can't have an interactive session with the
Okay.
students. Okay. So it was your topic was contours of religious precarity and feminist tropes in Monica Alice, Brick Lane, and Untold Story, and it told several stories of sufferings of women. I think societal, familial, patriarchal, through patriarchal norms and conventions and customs and religion, all these things you have discussed in an effective way. Actually, we experience it in such a way that we were having an offline session itself. We are sitting in an auditorium with you. Such an active session it was really. And yes, it's really interesting that you discussed the scrutiny of the societal scrutiny of the outside world about women's life also. That was really interesting. Actually, I think students can identify that, what to say, most of this. Because women are marginal, the mostly marginalized people, they experience double marginalization everywhere. They have to come out from all these conventions and all. It was really informative and active session, sir. Thank you, sir, for that, for such a wonderful session. And thank you, all the participants from various part of the country. I think your name suggested me that you are from different parts of the country. So actually, we have united the nation as such when you discuss this special story. Thank you for that. Then, my dear students, they listen patiently, and thank you for them. Okay, before that, I forgot to thank our dear HOD, Dr. Reena Muhammad, who availed us this special opportunity of having Sagir Ali, sir, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Midnapur. Thank you, Reena ma'am, for bringing Sagir Ali, sir, here. Then, yes, My dear colleagues, thank you all for your cooperation for making this program, this webinar, a great success. Thank you all.
And it's my privilege to have you to be with you. And I'd like to sincerely thanks to all the participants and the moderators, principal sir, and especially Dr. Rina Mohammed. Thank you.